Hello, everyone, and good morning and welcome. It's really great to be here with you today. We're here to discuss the draft framework for the Environmental Justice Advisory Council, which will be referred to as EJAC throughout this meeting. My name is Christy Spotsville, and I'm a staff services analyst with the California Department of Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. Thank you so much for joining us today as we map out the beginning stages of forming the council. We're currently in the public comment period, which started May 15th for the draft framework. We do encourage you to provide us with feedback, and you'll have the opportunity to do so after the presentation. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website. The chat will be used to provide information to you from the presentation, and questions will be taken audibly and through the Q&A feature. Slide 2, please. We do have Spanish interpretation available. You can find the globe interpretation icon on your Zoom toolbar and select whether you want to listen in English or Spanish. It is important that everyone select a language. We'll now hear these instructions in Spanish from Elsa, our public participation specialist with DTSC. Elsa?
Thank you. Seleccionar idioma preferida. Instrucciones para la computadora. Abajo de su pantalla mirará el icono de un mundo. Selecciónelo y escoja Spanish o español. En sus teléfonos inteligentes, escojan More o Más. Escojan Interpretación y seleccionen Español. Next screen.
Here's information if you would like to join us by phone. And we do have both an English and Spanish call-in number. The phone numbers are listed on our website as well and will be posted in the chat. We'll now hear Elsa again to provide this information in Spanish. Elsa?
Información de llamada. Números de llamada de Zoom en inglés es área 669-900-6833. ID de reunión es 817-6361-8385E. Ingrese el código de acceso 3522. Número de llamada en español 916-535-0993. ID de conferencia 848-523-85E. Ingrese la tecla. Next slide.
Now I'll go over the meeting agenda. We'll have a presentation on the draft framework by Diana Ballesteros, who is the Deputy Director of the Office of Legislation and Regulatory Review. And after that, we'll open it up for your feedback. Also, we'll have Serlene Grant, who's our new Deputy Director of the Office of Environmental Equity, facilitate that portion of the meeting. After we hear from you, Diana will close with information about the next steps. Slide 5, please. For questions from the media, please contact Devin Hutchings, our Public Information Officer, at devin.hutchings@dtsc.ca.gov. That's it for opening announcements, and I'll hand it over to Diana to begin the presentation. Diana?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Diana Vasquez Ballesteros, the Legislative Director for the Department of Toxic Substance Control. I also want to do a quick introduction to both board members, Luis Ruiz and also Georgette Gomez, who are going to be also presenting along with me this framework. And with that, I can go into the next slide. So the meeting objectives for today are really, really simple. It's really introducing the Environmental Justice Advisory council draft framework. Really, the main objective is for us to be able to get input, answer any questions, and clarify any sections within the framework. In addition to that, we're going to be taking in your comments, your questions, and then also revising the framework accordingly based on some of the feedback that we have been receiving. This is our actually third time that we're going to be having a virtual setting. We have actually had 2 additional engagement opportunities, one in the Central Valley, specifically in the city of Fresno, and that happened in June 29th. Also, we just had another session last week on July 12th in the city of El Cerritos for us to actually be able to get input. We're also going to be planning having another in-person virtual option meeting for us to actually be receiving input from the community in the city of LA. That information is going to be coming out pretty soon, but this is really a moment for us to actually be receiving input from y'all on the framework that both board members and also DTSC staff worked on. And with that, I can provide a little background and we can go into the next slide. Yeah, so the premise of the framework came out of the reform conversations that we had in 2021, specifically through the governance and fee reform, specifically that was passed through the Senate Bill 158. Specifically, what we worked on within the framework was to assist in the development of forum that represents communities across California impacted by the Department of Toxic Substance Control's programs, activities, and to provide environmental justice advice, consultation, and recommendations to both the director of the department and also board members within the Board of Environmental Safety. And this is really critical, where we really worked on really trying to get clarity on how we can develop a forum and what would that forum look like and what's the proper membership within the forum. And this is where the framework really is the premise of that, is for us to have a baseline of what we're creating towards, and really how is this forum going to be really meeting the statutory requirements that were listed within Senate Bill 158. And we can go into the next slide. And one of the things that definitely want to develop a little bit or provide a little bit more background. So the development of the framework really started last summer and really went into a little bit of the fall of last year. We were refining some specific provisions for us to really get a sense from the community of how we are able to really look at this Environmental Justice Advisory Council. We wanted to get a sense from the communities on just membership numbers. How many individuals should we consider in the membership? Who should be really considered for this council? What are the different policy and procedures that this council should be following? Should we really look into specifically the deliverables of the Environmental Justice Advisory Council? So this is the input that we're receiving from community members and just in general, the public, on how we can actually finalize the framework. So once we finalize the framework, we can actually start looking for potential members for the Environmental Justice Advisory Council. In addition to that, the Environmental Justice Advisory Council was also granted and allocated $2 million for really the operations. This is including a stipend, a per diem stipend for the individuals who join the council, to be able to actually compensate for their time and basically and the resources that they're providing towards the EJAC. This was it for us. We were able to get the authority starting July 1st of this year. It was just signed into the Budget Act as of 3 weeks ago. So now we have the authority to be able to actually provide the per diem. In addition to that, we were able to actually have the ability for the EJAC to be able to actually grant or contract out any services that they feel is necessary once the committee is fully functioning. And really, I think for us is the funding is allocated until the fiscal year 24-25. However, this is something that if the council is and the members who are in the council feel that this is something that they want to continue. I know both the department and the Board of Environmental Safety had discussions to really make it more of a permanent body. Only if the members of the council and also the community members who are being served by the council feel that this is something that's necessary and they want to see it through and have more of a permanency throughout our operations within the department and the board. With that, I will hand it off to Board Member Gomez, where she can provide a little bit more on specifically the purpose. And that, Board Member?
Thank you, Deanna. So I'm a board member for the environmental safety, and I also have another of our board members here with me, Member Ruiz. And we're gonna go over a little bit of more of the content of what the framework is about. We gotta recognize that this is the continuation of other meetings that we have had. So we so far have received feedback, and right now that feedback that we received has not been included in our draft framework. So we are going to wait to gather all the feedback, and then this committee is going to take the feedback and make decisions on what amendments will be incorporated. And we will create a different draft with that in mind. So this is an opportunity to provide us with additional amendments to the framework, to the current draft framework, as well as if there's any areas that need a little bit more clarity or expansion, we also welcome that. So thank you once again for being here. So the intention of the EJAC is it's going to be an independent body that would advise and give recommendations to DTSC specifically, as well as the board on environmental justice issues that are related to the work that DTSC does. So this will be an independent body that will be able to also be supported by staff, and there will be an opportunity to bring on board consultants if needed, based on what the work will look like and any support that the body will need. This is a community, a space for impacted community members would participate and can participate. So we want to ensure that there is a strong collaborative effort with impacted communities, impacted by the work that DTSC does in the state of California. The idea is that by doing so, we're highlighting some of the areas that can and should be improved to try to prevent health impacts to our community members. Next slide. So one of the areas that we highlighted is a strong commitment to the principles of environmental justice, which were established by the first National Peoples of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. There was a summit that happened a while ago, and there were these principles that were crafted with the idea of prevention. So instead of creating the health impacts, let's lead from a lens of prevention. And there are many other principles, but really the center point of those is to try to prevent environmental impacts to impacted communities. So we're hoping that the EJAC is centering its work around that and incorporates that in mind as they're focusing on their work. Next slide. As I stated, this is a very heavy community, a community-focused body, because we're trying to ensure that we're creating a space for that voice to be highlighted. So we want to make sure that the group is approaching its work from a community-based approach. There is a call out on the draft document that this body will create its strategies, its work focus and the outcomes that they would want to see happen and also create measurable goals. The whole purpose is to really evaluate and ensure that the work is happening, but more importantly, that there's accountability, transparency, and that they're also getting the same type of accountability and transparency from the agency as well. So this is not just on the work that this group would have, but also vice versa, right? If they're working to try to improve in the areas that DTSC is needing to, then we're also expecting that, or the board as well, of environmental safety. Next slide. So this is more on areas that I've already covered. So the group, EJAC, will establish its own strategies. Once the advisory council is put together, they're going to have an ability to create their own strategies, their own work plan, and how they're going to measure their success. There's strong language, and we've been called out that there needs to be more clarity on how they're going to be connecting to DTSC and DTSC, how DTSC is going to connect with this body of work that this group is being asked to do as they set their work to really improve environmental justice. So there's an ability to create a really strong bridge between both. But more importantly, to uplift environmental justice through the state of California.
And some of just to add, some of the things on the first bullet point are things that are priorities or things that are something that the Board of Environmental Safety is already looking into. And so these are just some of the things that we listed as an example that the EJAC can focus on in advising the Board of Environmental Safety. And as Member Gomez mentioned, we have been called out on perhaps stating that these should be some of the things that the group should focus on. But as a group, when we were coming up with the framework, we also really wanted to leave it open for the group members themselves to decide what their focus should be. But for the purpose of this workshop, we would like to hear what your thoughts are on that, what your recommendations are.
Next slide. So I also already mentioned this, but right now the framework is a little bit open-ended on how the interaction with DTSC would be, as well as the interaction with the BES, the Board of Environmental Safety. We've been asked to try to define it in a stronger, in a more accountable way. So that's an area that has been highlighted by the public so far that needs improvement. So if members that are here today, if there's any thoughts on how they can look like, we welcome it as well. There's at least one member so the BES board meets every other month, sometimes every month. But we are wanting to create a space for a representative of this group to represent and report on highlights of what's happening with the EJAC. So we're thinking of creating space in our public meetings to ensure that we're uplifting the work that is being done and conducted and how they're relating to both DTSC and BES. Next slide. So in terms of the membership for EJAC, right now the framework calls for a minimum of 5 members that are that would represent vulnerable communities across California to be part of the EJAC. There was a trailer bill that was introduced that calls out for the maximum. So right now we have a minimum of 5, no more than 25 members due to this trailer bill that was introduced. So there's a pretty big range. We don't have a set number because we recognize that California is a very long and very diverse state. So we want to make sure that there is representation from all of our communities, from the urban, the rural, and such. We also call out for tribal representation, at least one member, but we also recognize that one does not represent all our nations. But at least we do make reference to at least minimally one representative as well. We want to make sure that the folks that are part of this group are really residents that are impacted by decisions that DTSC has done and will continue to do. But also community members that work and group in these communities as well are welcome to be a part of. Next slide. So this body is set to be around right now until June 30th of 2025. And that is per SB 158 that Deanna laid out in terms of the bill that created the charter for the creation of this group. There has been also mentioned by others that they would want to see this group not have a sunset. They want to see the group continue for till the duration that the group wants to, that we want to ensure that it exists. So that could be some work that is done by the group and by the BES and BDTSC as we at least put it together and we see how successful it is. As I stated, California is pretty big, so we want to make sure that the membership is reflected of its geographical, but also the regional diversity that California brings to all of us. Next slide. Same reflection of the diversity. We will want to see EJAC to reflect that as we put the membership together. Next slide. So EJAC is not limited to, but we do want to strive for residents that are impacted by decisions at DTSC, but it's not limited to that. We want to make sure that there's expertise and there's experience, lived experience, that there's representation of folks that work to try to improve environmental justice. We do make reference to creating representation for our younger population as well, recognizing that a lot of these issues impact their lives and they should have a voice in how to address and improve some of these issues. So there is a set of areas that in certain demographics called out in terms of how we want to see this group be created as well. Next slide. In terms of how we're going to be putting, once we finish the framework, then the fun begins in trying to select and put the group together. So there will be a process that is laid out on the framework. There's a committee that will be formed. This committee is made up by 3 members of the community that works to advance environmental justice, 2 staff representatives from DTSC, 2 members of the BES board, and the BES board will decide who that is. that would be the committee that would be creating the application process and the selection process. Once that application is created, then we're going to open it up for folks to apply, and then this committee will evaluate the folks that have applied. We want to make sure that the process is as transparent as we can. So the process will be available and open to the public. Next slide. So there is funding for this body for the EJAC, and also there is supportive staff. So we recognize that although there will be stipends available for members, this is not a full-time job, but it is a lot of work. We have a lot of work to do collectively to really address environmental justice. And we recognize that support might be needed. So there is staff dedicated to supporting the EJAC, and they'll be available. Next slide. So the document also is very open and not prescriptive in how the EJAC should function and govern itself. So we do call out examples, but we hope that the body creates and develops its own governing structure. They would also have the ability to determine its meeting structure and its meeting schedule, their own work plan, as well as there is funding, and some funding will be available for the group to determine how to utilize it to ensure that they are successful in the work that they're set to do. There will be some operational guidelines as well created, being that this is just a framework, but also we know that frameworks, there's more to it. So there will be some guidelines that follow the framework once established.
Also, to just highlight that the work plan, the framework does call out working together with the DTSC director and board BES board chair. So just to make that, just put that out there and see what y'all feel about that, and whether you guys have any opinion on that or other suggestions.
Next slide. So as Liz member Ruiz mentioned, although the work plan is we make reference that the group would create, there is mentioning on the framework that the work plan, the deliverables would be determined by the chair of the BES and DTSC executive and the EJAC leadership as they establish their own governance structure. So those three areas of leaders would finalize, I guess, the deliverables and the areas in which the group will be focusing on. We have heard some feedback on this, questioning it. So we would love to hear more on how people feel about that. The group is able to create ad hoc working groups as needed in committees as they wish. And as I stated, they can also solicit outside expertise for assistance on the work that they'll be that they're conducting for DTSC. Next slide. And up next, I'm going to hand it over to Sirlene Grant, who will be facilitating the question and answer for this and getting some feedback on the framework. Thank you.
Good afternoon, late morning. Okay, so we're going to take the next few minutes to entertain public comment and any questions from any of you in our audience. this morning. A little bit of instructions and directions on how to do that. Here on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature that's at the bottom of your toolbar. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we'll see a little toggle on our end to let us know that you're there. And if you're doing text only, use the question and answer feature. I will call on people who are on Zoom, and then for those who are on the Spanish audio, the interpreter will ask the question for you. And then we will circle back around to the interpreter and the Zoom room and the interpreter and people on the phone. So we hope to make sure that we get everyone's question. And I see a hand already up. Thank you, Vanessa Batista. Can we unmute Vanessa? Thank you,
Hi,
Vanessa.
yes.
Hi.
Hi, thank you. I do have a question. I guess it's more for a clarification. So during the slide of the selection process, it mentioned having 2 members of the BES. Can I get some clarification on what that entails, or who the BES is part of, or what they're part of?
Yes, Georgette or Lizzie?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. This is Georgette. I'm happy to respond to that. So yeah, so the Board of Environmental Safety right now dedicated 2 representatives of the board to work with DTSC to develop this framework. So we are. It doesn't mean. I mean, the expectation is that it would be myself and Member Reese being part of the selection committee of who will EJAC, how will the development of the actual membership of EJAC, but it could be there's 5 members to the BES board. It could be any other 2, any 2 members that are on the board. So the chair will determine who are those 2 members. But like I said, right now it's myself and Member Reese. So it might be us continuing with to participate in the selection of the EJAC.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the Zoom room? Any other hands raised? Not seeing any. Does our interpreter have any questions in the queue? Do we have any call-in or Q&A questions?
None in Spanish.
None in Spanish, thank you. I see a hand raised.
In the Q&A.
Okay, I didn't quite hear that. I hear a hand raised from Ivana Castellanos.
Hi, good morning. This is Ivana Castellanos from Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles. I was just hoping maybe if you all could speak to any resources or support that you imagine if you're able to provide to any monolingual speakers that might be interested in engaging with the EJAC. I'd love to hear about that. Thank you.
Sure. We will be making our meetings bilingual in that we will be providing interpreters, definitely for Spanish. Diana or Member Gomez or Ruiz?
And I can take that. And if any of the board members want to chime in, I think it was more on just try to get clarification, specifically individuals that want to be a board member, but they need the assistance to be either translator interpretation, or are you asking if folks want to engage with the EJAC? Definitely can answer both. I think the thinking is if there's individuals, and we want to encourage monolingual individuals to actually be a part of the EJAC. If that's the case, we can definitely support with translation. I think one of the things that we just have to in the application, and this is something that I think it will be really notable that we should include, like if you need help with translation interpretation, what language, and that shouldn't be a barrier for individuals from applying to be a part of the EJAC. If individuals want to actually assist, to Serlene's point, and just observing how the EJAC conducts their functions, meetings, et cetera, because really the hopes is all the meetings that the EJACs are going to be participating in are going to be public, and they're going to be accessible for individuals to actually participate. More likely we're going to be supporting them with translation interpretation as well too. But I don't know if both Gomez or Ruiz.
I can add to that. We also call out the having or providing help to fill out the application itself for folks that might not be or have access to the computer or internet. And during our discussions, we also talked about providing help, especially with the funding that's coming through now, for folks to have a reliable connection for meetings that might be not in person. So there is definitely resources for help like that.
I would just add, that's a really good question, Ivana. Thank you for that. I think right now the framework doesn't call out for members of the EJAC to serve in their non-English capacity, like non-English speakers. So it can, if that is a request. I mean, this is a moment for us to gather feedback. So if the question, I would pose it as a proposal for us to consider not only the diversity, but also the linguistic diversity that we have in terms of representation. I think that's a good comment for us to hear, because right now it's worded in the way that is expected to be English speakers, but nothing precludes it from being something different.
Thank you. We have a question in the Q&A. Swati, can you read it, please?
Sure, there's two questions. The first one is, timeline-wise, when will the EJAC application be available, and when do you anticipate the committee will start to meet?
Yeah, and I can take that. I think one of the things where we realized more of a timeline is we're trying to obviously finalize the application or the framework once the framework is finalized. So as we start getting input, like this is perfect with the comments that we have been receiving, is we'll make those changes within the framework. Once that framework is finalized, we're going to go out and for public release with the application. So this is a framework that individuals are applying to, basically, because that's one of the comments that we received is if I'm going to be a part of the EJAC, what are going to be my commitments, my deliverables, what's going to be the capacity that you need the members to actually serve in, et cetera, et cetera. So really are trying to, really finalize the framework. And then obviously that's when we're going to be able to actually start asking for applicants. We really wanted to actually, hopefully, this is being ambitious, by the fall, if we're able to actually have a full functioning EJAC by, honestly, and I don't want to put a date, but I think, September the earliest, October the latest, because we really want to actually, if we could have, it would have been nice to actually have the EJAC already running, but I think, by the fall, so we can actually work with them and onboarding them, introducing them to the board schedule. They already have, they're planning their upcoming board meetings for next year, and also at least with the department, really getting them onboarded for the next calendar year. I think that's really the goal. But I don't know if both the board members have anything else.
We want to move as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things when the application is fully, we extended the comment period till the 21st of August. But what we're trying to do is not wait until then so we can actually modify the application. So while we're getting input, we're also making changes to the application and the application and the framework. So hopefully by really end of August, beginning of September, we're able to actually have a full on, like, hey, here's a framework, here's the application, go ahead and apply. Obviously allow ability and space for individuals to do that. And then we'll close the application and then we'll go ahead and start onboarding individuals. Really, it's an ambitious timeline, but I think we have been getting really good feedback, and we've just been revising some of those elements in the framework. So.
Thank you. Sue Patel has been waiting with a question.
Hi. I have a basic question, but first I would like to say bravo to DTSC and the BES to take this on. Much needed. The question I have is, I'm used to providing comments and receiving comments in a different sense. So this is where I'm coming from, having worked at DTSC. Are these the comments that you are taking, or is there going to be a place where we can submit written comments?
Yes, we will be, at the end of this meeting, we will be making known an email address where you can submit some information, and we will announce the end of the closing of the comment period, which will be in August. So there's an opportunity to also submit materials through writing and email them to us.
We're also making use of all the comments being said throughout the workshops. So if people have any comments now, we'll also take those into account, and we're compiling them together, and we'll, as Member Gomez mentioned earlier, we will be looking through them and answering whether or not they're going to be incorporated in the framework, and posted online publicly for the sake of transparency.
Thank you for that. I will look for that email, but I also would like to take some time to review the framework, and that's why the question, but I appreciate the answer. Look forward to this. Thank you.
And this, Sue Patel, just also to add, in addition to the email where you can send additional comments, we also have been setting one-on-one meetings as well with folks to gather more information. So we also welcome that. If folks want to reach out and set up a meeting where you want to share more in an intimate setting, we also welcome.
Awesome. I might take you up on that.
Thank you. I believe there's a question in the Q&A queue.
Yes, the question is from Enrique Baeza. How is the department thinking about measuring the negative toxic exposure by the 4 types of toxic exposure: inhalation, skin absorption, ingestion, and injection?
That's, I'm like, and Tundika, that's a good question. I think one of the things is, I don't know if this is something of a question to see how the EJAC is going to be looking at questions like these. I think one of the things I don't know if the EJAC is the appropriate body to actually assist with this question. But let's say if there's questions like that are provided to the EJAC, then the EJAC will go ahead and try to really funnel it through the department of the board and see who can actually be the appropriate body to actually be able to provide that response. I think I'll take the moment, given that we did just release a hazardous waste management plan report out, and that was yesterday. Happy to share the link on that. And that's the first hazardous waste management plan that we have had ever in the department that's really looking at the way we manage our waste in California. And that's really, for one, how even we classify the waste. And we look at the waste in the disposal, generation, and transport of it, though. So I think that will be a really appropriate question for that forum, personally. So.
Are there any questions through the interpreter? All right, then we will move forward. Enrique Baeza.
Hey, hello. Nice to hear you, Sue, and nice to see some of you guys here on the DTSC. Congratulations on this class.
No questions in Spanish.
Thank you. Mr. Beza, can you move closer to your microphone? It was hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
So the reason I asked the question is because on the bullets, it actually states to provide advice, consultation, and recommendation to promote and protect those who are negatively impacted by the toxic exposures. But obviously, when you talk about toxic exposure, there's those four types of how you would get exposed by. I mean, this is amazing, by the way. I mean, it's a very grand, incredible group that's being done. So I'll take you on the meeting, Mrs. Gomez, because I think, 5 people is not enough. It's definitely not enough because there's a lot of expertise that's going to be required, right? So you have different programs in DTSC from geologists, toxicologists, cleanup, enforcement, toxic and product. So yeah, I'll send you an email so hopefully we can discuss further on some of the items that I've identified that I think that should be addressed.
Thank you. Just a reminder to those who are listening on the phone only, if you want to ask a question, press *9 to raise your hand. It will signal us here in the room, in the Zoom room. And if you're on Zoom, there's a toggle at the bottom. I see a caller has a question. Your phone number ends in 926 on the phone.
Please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi,
Thank
can you hear me? Awesome.
Yes.
Wonderful. This is Joel Torres with Supervisor Janice Hahn, Environmental Deputy. My question is around coordinated efforts to ensure that, representation on this body is it intentional that it be for members from low socioeconomic or disadvantaged communities? That's my question.
Yes, it really is, and part of the purpose that this EJAC was created was to kind of add balance to the bill SB 158, and personally, the board itself has limited authority, and we are all appointed by the governor and by the legislature. So, there's no guarantee that there will be that kind of representation to oversee DTSC. And so, by providing this EJAC, we hope to have that connection, that direct connection to overburdened communities, and to have that open line of communication, guaranteed and hopefully really represented. And so that's definitely one thing that we hope to hear from the audience. How can we guarantee that representation? What is an ideal number to really try to get there? What is too much? What is too little? I mean, definitely 5 is not enough. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just add it in terms of was there an intention in addition to what member restated is yes, because the intention is that we are focusing on environmental justice and data history has proven that a lot of the sites that are harmful are sited in low-income communities of color. Not many wealthy, more affluent communities have landfills that are toxic. So we really want to ensure that there's a strong space created for those issues to be had and hopefully come with solutions so we can really dig and improve how DTSC I say DTSC because BES is also an accountability body to DTSC. We're trying to advance some of the relationship to how DTSC does work in communities. So a lot of the work really does tie to DTSC, how they are addressing environmental justice and the decisions that they manage, right? So this is a really intentional for those purposes. We really want to welcome impacted residents, but it's not excluded to impacted residents. It's also, we're also calling out folks that work in the space of environmental justice in the impacted communities, and such.
Yeah, and I think to just to add to that, also to, you know, let's say if staff members or individuals that are working for elected officials at the local, state, federal level want to engage with the EJAC, you know, it's a public body. So, you know, there's nothing to preclude those individuals actually engaging in the EJAC, just discussions, operations, and we welcome that too, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of cross coordination that we're going to be working within the department and the board, but really trying to really have the EJAC be accessible. And that's going to be a responsibility that's going to be placed on the department and the board to make it accessible, right, if needed, and really having more of the direction from the EJAC on how they want to be engaging with the community. And you know, I think that also relies on how we engage with elected officials in the local levels, depending on the cities and counties that we're in, on behalf of the EJAC. But I think to both Georgette and Liz, really the essence of and the spirit of how this forum came about is how do we give a voice, but how do we also compensate for their time? I think number one issue is that we have been asking a lot of input and recommendations from environmental justice communities and members without really properly compensating for their time. And I think we're cognizant of that. And that's something that in the spirit of folks who have been asking for an EJAC in the past is let's do it right. And also let's actually pay these members for their commitment and time.
So there's lots of good questions. Again, comments and questions regarding membership selection, implementation, duties assigned. Ivana Castellanos, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, this is Ivana Castellanos again with Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles. I haven't given this a lot of thought. It just came to me right now, but so I don't have a specific recommendation for you all, but I think it would be helpful to think through how to work through potential like conflicts of interest, or like if someone that's on the selection committee, someone else at their organization wants to apply, those sorts of issues that might arise. I don't have any specific recommendations for how to best do that. I can give that some thought, but it just came to me and I thought I would share. Thank you.
Yeah, and we welcome that too, Ivana. That's something that we'll take input on how to select the two individuals. Community members, any advice that you can give both to the board members and the DTSC staff will be greatly appreciated. And then once they're selected, what are they excluded from? Let's put it that way, right? They can review applications from their own membership or, you know, organizations or community, et cetera, because of the conflict, right? How do you create more of a firewall between that? We'll love to get input on that, but also too, we're working with our partners throughout EPA, Cal EPA, because there's other EJACs, Environmental Justice Advisory Committees within both the CARB and the Water Board, and also similar groups where we're taking models of how they have avoided conflict, because that's something that we have been kind of made aware of. So we want to be able to look at that. So if there's any models that you have seen that you worked on, or even committees that you have participated yourself, we'll love to get that input from you.
Again, if you're on the phone and you have a question, press *9. I don't think we have a question in the Q&A. Swati, please.
Yes, there's an anonymous participant. What has the engagement been with Exide communities during the EJAC framework development?
So I'll take that. And this is a huge reason. I'll have both board member Ruiz here, who has been a part of some of the working sessions that we have had with the Exide communities and the PIA specifically. And we're going to be in LA in the next month or so, specifically to target, equally the Exide communities and other communities around the Southern California region, specifically in the LA county region. And that's why we want to make it accessible. And I think we want to provide an in-person, a virtual option because of that. And there has been a lot of activities that individuals have engaged in the Southern California region. And I think for us is how do we actually have that be intentional? Thus, the extension of the public comment period was at a request of some individuals that they wanted to actually look at this, think about the framework a little bit more, and also for us to actually be there in person. So I don't know if the other board members have anything else to add on that.
And I think, at least for me personally, as somebody who grew up within the Exide affected area and who lives, right outside the affected, the area of investigation, it's definitely something that's been in my mind, how to provide not just folks, who have worked and who represent other members of the community within the that have been affected by Exide, but other similar sites, and that really is behind the spirit of creating this advisory group that other places throughout the state have the ability to have somebody represent them and bring that to light.
All right, I don't see any other questions. If you are on Zoom, full operating screen Zoom, you can hit the raised hand icon at the bottom. If you are on the phone and you have a question, you can do *9. And you can also use our question and answer feature. And I'll double check with the interpreter to see if we have anyone who has a question there. All right, thank you all for your thoughtful questions and your creativity. And again, as I have stated, we will be having the public comment. We are in a public comment period where you can send public comments. So we can go to the next slide. And we're going to end our public comment period on August 25th. Between now and then, we will also be having a community meeting in Southern California. And if you have comments that you want to share, you want to write and share, the email address is here, the EJAC info at dtsc.ca.gov. And I think also the one-on-one meetings, we put the email address in the chat, but it is here as well. One-on-one meetings, so you can talk to the members of the BES. And you can contact them at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And then, like I said, upcoming workshops, we will have an in-person workshop, the date to be determined. Our previous workshops were hybrid, but because of some scheduling challenges, we are doing this one virtual, and then we'll do the upcoming one in person. And you can sign up for updates on our e-list at www.dtsc.ca.gov/DTSC-E-list. You can also go to the DTSC Office of Environmental Justice and Tribal Affairs on their website and click subscribe, and you will also be added to our mailing list. And any final words from our board members or any of the staff?
Yeah, and I can go really quickly, but I just really want to be just grateful for everybody joining the time. Really good questions. I think this is the purpose of these forums, for us to really think about what is missing, what can we add, and really improving the framework that, you know, we're hoping that can actually be a permanent framework moving forward. And that's something that we're working towards, and creating that baseline that we can work off. And just really grateful for the board member, both Georgia Gomez and board member Liz Ruiz, for all their time. This has been a labor of love for both of them, and I think it's been really great for the last couple of months that we've been trying to finalize a framework that we can put in front of the public. So I'm grateful for y'all and everybody else, DTSC staff and board staff that put this together. Really thank you for that too. So board members.
I just wanted to echo that and really appreciate everybody's time, and definitely welcome any comments, any advice, any further questions. You guys know how to get a hold of us. And yeah, I really look forward to reading these comments and hopefully, working with some of you if you guys apply and get selected, or even, throughout the process of participating at the EJAC meetings, which will be publicly available. So thanks again, everybody, for your time.
If you can hear me, yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
For whatever reason, I can't hear folks. Just also wanted to express my gratitude for everybody and being here, sharing your thoughts, the questions, your comments. Definitely want to encourage people, if there's any other thoughts or comments, to please send them our way. There's still time to make this draft framework stronger, which is what our wish is and what our commitment is, to ensure that we are creating the best environmental justice advisory council to really help DTSC achieve environmental justice within the work that they do. So we welcome that, and just thank you once again.
All right. And with that, I believe we are done with this particular workshop. And we thank, as everyone has stated, thank you for participating and for sharing your ideas and for listening.